Thank you, Madam Chair. 1 week ago today, something absolutely incredible happened in my district. Major League Baseball played the All-Star game at Truist Park in Atlanta. Why is that incredible? Because in 2021, Major League Baseball pulled the All-Star game from Atlanta based on false information and fear tactics spread about Georgia's election integrity bill. Why did it come back? Georgia's election integrity bill is still the law today as it was in 2021. Why? Because all the fear-mongering turned out to be inaccurate. In fact, in the 2024 election, record number of minorities voted early. Why? Because exactly what we said that bill would do would make it easier to vote and harder to cheat. This is an illustration of how misinformation and fear tactics hurt the majority of people who should be able to vote. Every time someone is, and part of the election integrity bill was to clean up voter rolls. I remember back growing up in Georgia, there was a joke about a politician who would go into the local cemetery to practice his campaign stump speeches. And he would go to one side of the cemetery and practice, and he would go to another side, and somebody asked him, so why do you walk all around the cemetery speaking? He said, because the people on that side of the graveyard have just as enough right to vote for me as the people on this side of the graveyard. I mean, that was a running joke, but it was based on reality. That disenfranchises people who should be able to vote and should have influence in elections. Mr. Reamer, what is the role of an election official in removing voters who have died, and what steps did you take in Virginia to ensure that the deceased voters were no longer on the rolls?
Absolutely. So the role is really going to depend on whether you're at the state or local level. At the state level, you're really responsible for making sure that the local election officials have access to the death data, whether that's from Social Security Administration, whether it's from state vital statistics. At the local level, that they're the ones typically removing these deceased voters. In Virginia, the local registrars would actually go through obituaries, like the good ones would actually go through local obituaries or similar sources and remove voters that way. So it's really an all of the above approach. You're not going to find every deceased person and remove them, but I think most states can certainly do better than they have, and it just takes an all of the above approach.
So what about states like Virginia and Georgia that have voter ID laws? How does that equate? What's the link? What's the importance of cleaning the voter rolls there?
Sure. Well, if you don't have voter ID and you have somebody that's on the rolls that is no longer in the state or is no longer alive, obviously there's the chance that someone could go and vote on behalf of that person. Or if someone hasn't been removed, and they live in another state, they can vote in both states, and we know that happens. It's a relatively common occurrence. So if you're not verifying the identity of that person, then someone could vote fictitiously in their name.
So why is it important to clean the rolls within 90 days of an election?
Well, I think it's important to relax the blackout period, because oftentimes a lot of these issues don't really emerge until closer and before the election. And because that blackout period also applies to a primary, I mean, really you're looking at the entire federal election year. You're stopped from doing anything to remove voters, at least those who are non-residents at this point. So you have to sit on your hands and just, be approaching an election and know there are ineligible voters on your voter file and not be able to do anything about it.
Right. So you mentioned at the beginning of your response to my question, some of the resources that can be used to verify voter identity. What are the most useful or the most effective that you have seen?
As far as list maintenance tools, I certainly think data from other states is huge. Obviously, Americans are moving between states constantly, and it's really important that states are sharing data with one another. I think Mr. Adams brought up towards the end of his presentation the use of commercial data. I think that's very important. We have always relied on the Postal Service, and let's face it, the Postal Service is not what it used to be. The NCOA database is not what it used to be. And so you've got to go outside those traditional sources of data and get creative. And I think their use of commercial data is one that's got a lot of promise.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair, I yield back.